Welcome everyone. We are running 13th session of Sitecore Headless Development User Group. We have 3 speakers lined up for today, and the first to take the stage will be Liz Nelson. And I think, Liz, you will be talking about lots of exciting things from SUCON Europe, those you presented. Am I right?
I will be. I'll be talking about my favorite subject too, so I'm very excited.
That will be, I believe, content SDK and the starter kit. Oh,
Yes,
that's definitely your topic. All right, so without any time wasted, I welcome you here. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to use the same deck that we used for SICON, but I think my narrative is going to be a little different, and I'm really happy to take questions and to talk through this in a slightly different way than we would at like SICON. So I want to start by saying at the first Headless user group, I presented my take on JSS, and it was a presentation about what, like, me learning JSS as a new Sitecore employee and as a new Sitecore user. And it was a kind of presentation about everything I discovered about JSS, what I liked about it, what I thought needed improvement, where I thought like there could be potential changes, and how to best model a JSS for new frameworks like App Router. And so I had put together that presentation, and I actually didn't work in the product team at the time. And like I made the presentation and it was a lot of like, I don't work in the product team, but if I did, these are all the things that I would do. And kind of amazingly, I ended up working in the product team, and I got to like do all the things that I had wanted to do and made suggestions in the first Headless user group. So I feel like this is 13, and what's really fun is that this is like everything I said I'd really like to change about it. This is the result. So just a little bit of background of like, I don't know, my own personal journey of what I'm presenting here today, how it relates to the Headless user group itself, and just really, really fun to kind of tell the sort of end result of some of that story. So, okay. So let's see. Okay, developer experience, modernizing the JSS SDK and the starter kits for X and Class. I'm going to talk about developer experience in general. Then we'll kind of walk through what simplification of the JSS means, a little bit of what we've done to modernize documentation, and then we'll go over the transformation of the starter kit and just kind of see what comes next. So greater developer experience. ChatGPT definition of developer experience, but in general, like when I think about developer experience, and much of what we've defined about it, it's both making developers efficient, but also like enjoy and just have a joy out of what they're building and testing and deploying. And one of the things that most studies about developer experience kind of show is that developer experience isn't really just from a business perspective about like making developers move faster, but oftentimes when the silly problems move away, it leaves creative space for innovation. And what you'll find is that like the tools that provide the best developer experience actually lead to the most innovation, and like innovative teams typically are the ones that say they love the tools that they work with. And so developer experience just has so much so many reasons for a business to invest in making great developer experience in product. And so we kind of approach our product management from many perspectives and have a kind of whole ethos around how we approach DevX products. So what did the simplification of JSS entail? I love that because I'm showing it in preview mode. We see these like empty line rips. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so just a little bit of history. So JSS, it's had like a really amazing life. Like what's really interesting to me when I look into JSS and I like actually look at the first commits of JSS is that it's really early headless like innovation. And we've been doing headless CMSs for so long at Sitecore, and it's got profound it's got profound innovations in it, right? Like just really brilliant innovations in the way that it handles like recursive layout processing. Like when you look at SDKs, visual headless SDKs that are like creative and innovative SDKs that have come out like this year, last year, they're all based on really similar patterns. And this is, just been doing this for quite a while. But it was designed for XM and XP, which means that some of the toolings and the APIs that it makes available just aren't available in XM Cloud. And it's had a long life, which often means that it's built up quite a lot of features. And so, like, where are we today? It's been nearly 7 years. JSS is really quite mature. We're on version 22.5, and JSS now supports XMXP and XM Cloud. And what we've been seeing is that this kind of dual support of both XMXP and XM Cloud, as the products start to shift away from each other a bit and start to have their own feature development, it's created a lot of technical challenges to kind of maintain both in the same SDK. Like there's REST APIs that only work in XMXP. There's new features for XM Cloud Forms that are in there. There's like XM like Cloud SDK personalization features for XM Cloud, and so we've kind of decided that it was time to like let there be a split and allow there to be two SDKs, one that continues to support XMXP, and then we evolve one to be more targeted for XM Cloud. And so that brings us to kind of the first thing is like, instead of this sort of one thing to rule them all, which kind of introduces some unnecessary complexity, and it's like really created complicated release management. One thing to know about JSS is that it's tied to XM version releasing. And because it's tied to XM version releasing, it means that we make breaking changes in minor releases in order to introduce features for XM Cloud. And it's very confusing for XM Cloud users because all of a sudden on a minor version change, there's like some oddly breaking change. And so like it's not, and the bundle size has grown and grown because we've had to kind of maintain two of them. So like, double slides there. So what's our solution? Like split the responsibilities and get really just what you need, reduce that complexity. And so what does that look like? So new content SDK is what we're calling this sort of reimagined JSS. And my cat is just walking across the screen right now. So reimagined, kind of evolved JSS. The content SDK, we've removed quite a lot of folders, cleaned up some of the names, and just kind of began with what we needed for the new SDK. And some of just the sort of statistics about what's happened from what we've built. We've reduced 65% of the files of JSS. We've reduced 54% of the code. And so it is now a much smaller SDK. And quite a lot of what was removed is really just features and functionalities that are just supported in XM Cloud. My cat is just really going crazy right now. So If we do some static package analysis, we'll see that JSS 8.5 megs, now it's 934 kilobytes. So 89% size reduction in the SDK. And if you did some like bundle analysis, you'll see that the bundle sizes are also looking pretty good. And we've removed a few. The one I think more significant feature that we removed that could be supported in XM Cloud, but like we're making an architectural decision that this is the way forward with XM Cloud, is we've removed the Chrome's mode compatibility. So yeah, very, very, very excited about this. So several months ago we introduced a new architecture in XM Cloud that fundamentally improves the rendering time of our visual editing applications, pages, and also just kind of reduces some of the complexity around preview editing. Removed some of the middleware patterns there that were very hard, not very hard, but made it more complicated to support frameworks other than Next.js, which had been a bit of a challenge. It also prevented many people from using like external editing hosts and all sorts of hosting patterns. So this new sort of architectural change is really, it's a complexity reducer. It also has sped up the rendering experience, so pages is significantly faster, and it solves a problem that was really common, I guess, in prior with regards to recommendations around the number of renderings that were recommended per page. So previously, there was a lot of best practices around like only having so many renderings on a page, or else it'll slow down performance. This change to this metadata approach from pages approach like completely removes that restriction. We've done performance testing with 100, 200 components, like renderings on a page, and the performance is not degraded at all between that and 10 components. So like there is no scaling problem anymore with rendering because of this new mode. So that's another fairly significant reason why we just don't really want to kind of continue encouraging Chrome's compatibility. And if you're going to change to this SDK, like come on and enjoy the benefits of the new architecture. And we removed our REST-based services just because there's no REST API support for layout and other things in XM Cloud. And what that has resulted in is just like a reduction in the amount of sort of service abstractions. It's interesting, much more. Just take a look yourself. So yeah, we've created common naming conventions, focused on XM Cloud, removed a lot of legacy code, and just really focused on simplifying. So in a way, like what is the Content SDK? It is really just a kind of simplified and cleaned up version of JSS for XM Cloud. And it is remarkably, it's utterly compatible because it's the same thing. So like if, you're talking about how easy is it to switch onto it, it's pretty straightforward in terms of the SDK itself. And so then just one other thing, we wanted to undertake a documentation approach. So, we developer experience docs are just as important as anything else. And when we took a look at like the state of the JSS docs in Sitecore, the information architecture is a bit complex, or a lot of it complex, but quite a lot of it is like there's so much information there, and there's like just a lot of good information, but it's oftentimes hard to find it, and it's oftentimes hard to know what's important because there's so much of it. So we took a very serious look at docs and undertook an effort to restructure and rebuild a new set of documentation for the content SDK that kind of focuses on what's most important, how people learn JSS best, like what are the most important things to learn first and second, and just how you're going to approach exploring the SDK, and then fundamentally like the more detailed information being somewhere else. So as the slide says, like it's hard to kind of find what you're looking for. The structure of the first level is fairly complex. Like I don't really know how to even use the navigation. I only use the search. And there's still a lot of XM and XP content inside of the XM Cloud SDK content. So we can do better. And the thing is we already are doing better. Like if you take a look at our cloud SDK documentation, it's like really lovely, and it's got great information architecture. It's really easy to just kind of dive in and find what you're looking for. ASP.NET Core also has pretty clean model of information architecture. So we decided to kind of follow these new structured patterns that we've been introducing in our other SDK documentation and apply it to JSS. And so we've got pretty clean set of information architecture, and just a reduction in the amount of finding one has to do to kind of get a handle on what's inside of it. So that's been this project, and QR code here. Go and check out the docs. It is work in progress as we build more docs for the SDK itself. And so then comes to my very favorite part of this presentation, which is about starter kits. So starter kit for XM Cloud can be a bit overwhelming. So there's a lot in it. And when I first started learning XM Cloud, it took a while to figure it all out. Like I had to sort of dig around and kind of figure out what everything was doing, and it was a bit spread out. And when we talk to customers, they have really similar experiences, and it's just the onboarding to the starter kit is quite a lot. Plus, it has so many features in it that it kind of drifts a lot from like what you would call like, I don't know, standard Next.js like app. Like if I were just to CLI, like like create next app, like what I would get from that versus what I'm getting in the starter kit. There's just so much more material in there that I have to kind of learn. So it's kind of challenging. Config file, there's a lot of stuff in the temp file, and there's a very big lib folder. And when we talk to customers who are managing projects, the challenges are often that they have to maintain like updating when Sitecore updates something in those files, and then having to like update those things in their own kits and their own running projects. Like all the file diffing can be a real challenge because there's such a mixed, having to isolate the Sitecore things from like your files. And Sitecore put everything in a lib folder. So now like either you have to put your stuff in a lib folder or you have to, create another folder. Anyway, so there's just, there's a lot going on there. So our like principle here was make it as much as possible, like just reduce the footprint of Sitecore in a starter kit. Like Sitecore should barely be in your starter kit. Your starter kit should just look like a out of the box, whatever framework you're using, implementation. And so that's the philosophy of the entire starter kit transformation, is like, don't put our stuff in our customers' stuff. And so where do we start? Like we've got to file reduction 50%, code reduction 22%. Obviously, there's still quite a lot of code that's fairly meaningful there. Reduce about more than half the files. And then what's really fun is that like a lot of what we've done has even just improved our lighthouse scores. by like 200 milliseconds for first contentful paint. And so just to kind of go into this, like there's a nearly empty temp folder, which we'll kind of go over in a second. There's a nearly empty lib folder, the rework CLI. There's a new middleware pattern. We've removed the plugin architecture entirely. We've created a central configuration file. So all of the Sitecore configuration is no longer like everywhere in the application, but is consolidated into a Sitecore config file. Very common, like other frameworks would do, where you configure everything related to, TypeScript or to anything else into like a single config. We've simplified our own footprint in the next config, and so let's kind of take a look. So the config. So if you look, like there was this kind of config JS that was generated temporarily from like a config function, and it would create this config generation, and like sometimes it was difficult to figure out how to override it and other things. But now we just have very clean, there's a sitecore.config.ts file, and every single thing that you want to configure about the content SDK, you do in this file. And like that is the relationship. This your content SDK, and the configuration of it goes into this config. And very, very clean. Nowhere else in your starter kit are you configuring things for content SDK at all. So all your environmental variables, your API keys, any configuration about redirects or multi-site or personalization, any of the middleware that we provide as like out of the box middleware. And then coming soon, also any kind of configuration related to the component builder, that the on build time mapper that like tracks all of your components and builds the kind of component map that's used by Sitecore to register all of your components. So how does the temp folder look now? Like this is the temp folder now. So we went from all of this stuff to nothing but the component builder. And to me, like this is so key. There's no longer like tons of scripts that are just like auto generating for you that you kind of have to see. Now the component builder, that script, the one that does the source mapping and runs at build time and kind of discovers all of your components, like it's a really nice feature that customers really like, because it means that you don't have to maintain a component source map yourself. Most other CMSs make you have to register every single one of your components explicitly in order for them to become available in a visual like CMS. And this kind of discovery process, it's a nice feature. But what we are going to do is allow you to opt out of it. So you can just totally delete all of this and then just write your own source map of your component registration. And then we can ingest that to do your component registration, and you don't have to use our script at all. So even this file, you'll be able to delete if you want. But we did see enough customers really liked this feature that would maintain it. So nearly empty temp folder. Now our lib folder, same thing. Nearly empty lib folder. So we went from all of this to a Sitecore client, which is the way very common pattern for any other kind of like client instantiation. You have a client, you set it up, and then component props is very much related to the other very cool feature of Pages Router JSS that our customers love, which is that we provide this vehicle for component level data fetching, even though Pages Router didn't have any real pattern for component level data fetching. So like that is an incredibly used utility of our JSS that provides so much additional features for people above and beyond Next.js, Pages Router. So obviously state stays in. So two of our better innovations are in there, and other than that, no more footprint. And now the scripts. So scripts, pretty substantial reduction. If you look over to the right, what are the scripts? It's the component builder again. Again, you'll be able to opt out of that one. The bootstrap file, which is there to run the component builder, and then the fetching GraphQL introspection, which is an incredibly useful tool that lots of people use. So and then some of these will be cleaned up a bit too. This is still our beta version. And then let's take a look at some of the other things. So I'm going to kind of zoom in here because I guess this is a bit small. So our middleware plugins, the plugin model, while really powerful and extensible, a lot of our customers who aren't already familiar with plugin-like architectures found it a bit challenging to figure out how to extend it. And there's always this challenge of it's not immediately cognitively interpretable what the order in which the middleware will run. The ordering, because it's registered per middleware on different files, it means that you have to look at each file and then count the numbers in order to figure out what the pipe is. And middleware is all about a pipe. It's all about I chain one action to the next, and the output of the one request goes into the next function and goes into the next. And so really what you want to see is just a clean understanding of that pipe. And so we built a pipe. And so now you go ahead and define your middleware, and you just go ahead and order them however you want. You can write any new middleware function that you want, and put them in the pipe in whatever order makes sense for you. So that is that. And then if you go ahead and you look at our middleware, the Personalize, the redirects, and the multi-site middleware, they are really, really open for your extensions. And then the other thing to talk about, so the biggest one that is a bit of a challenge is the plugin for the page props factory. So page props factory, there's something really beautiful about what it was, and in some sense maybe we ruined that, but the page props factory, just const props, await Sitecore page factory, done. This idea that you just get the props and then your page gets built. But behind that page props factory is an unbelievable amount of activity. There's queries to the site info. There's 4 or 5 different utility queries that are going to site. There's layout to the page. Then there's all of the component level data fetching that's happening. There's differences of what happens when you're in preview mode versus when you're in normal mode. And so all of that stuff, you could affect by going into the plugin system. Is a bit of a black box though. Oftentimes when something goes wrong in that process, figuring out what went wrong and where things are happening, it's a little bit of a challenge, because all of that is behind our SDK and it's not particularly exposed. So what we did was we opened up the black box, and opening that up, it is a little more verbose, but you now have a whole lot more power in terms of how you explicitly influence what's happening in front of you. So you stand up a Sitecore client, you can pass in which sites, and you pass in the config to that Sitecore client, and then on that static props, instead of just having this page props factory, it's kind of opened up. So you get a page, you get the dictionary, you get the component data, and because you are actually, defining each one of these actions, you can manipulate the dictionary how you want, you can manipulate component props, you can put in the parameters to get the dictionary how you want to, and it's all just very exposed and available to you. So that is kind of the philosophy behind the page props changes. And so where we headed, we still have some work to do. Content SDK is very much in beta. We just released it on SuCon like 1.5 weeks ago. What are the things that we're going to do next? We're going to do some middleware optimization, especially around redirects, and that's coming in short order. We're updating the components that come in the starter kit itself, as well as the built-in styles. That's the one place where we still have kind of baked in opinions that are kind of mixing our things with your things. Those are being abstracted as well. We're going to an installable components and templates model. We're going to have a lot more demo template packages available for you for components to play with. And we are this quarter finally starting an app router. We needed to kind of do this work first before we started an app router. And so that is where we are headed. So yeah, I'm gonna to summarize, we took JSS and we decomposed it, reduced it, and are calling it the Content SDK. We've really simplified our Next.js starter kit, but we also made that starter kit more prepared to be agnostic for other frameworks. Now that pattern of the Sitecore config is very easily extended to other frameworks. So just the other foundation we are laying here is the ability to very easily support the exact same patterns framework to framework. And we've done a pretty significant documentation overall. So I will stop there and take any questions.
Yeah, this is amazing news what you just shared. And of course, we do have questions. So I probably have 3 to start with. Question number 1 is, will JSS, the original JSS, still support all the features of XM Cloud as it does for today, or will be at some stage later the timeline some sort of break so that only this XM Cloud Content SDK starts supporting XM Cloud and JSS remains for the self-hosted platforms?
Yeah, so migrating to the new Content SDK, when it comes to just straight SDK support, is as easy as just changing the npm packages. So there's very little breaking changes in what we've done with JSS. So we are encouraging everybody who is starting a new project or early in development to just make the change to Content SDK now. If you're in production though, wait until we're out of beta. We'll be out of beta in short order, but it's a different story if you're already running live websites. But we would encourage you to move to it because it really is a name change, and so it is going to kind of be the vehicle for most new development. What we will do is we will backport any optimization or bug fix or anything, but we really do want to try to encourage our customers to update when they can. and make that experience like as simple as possible. We're going to introduce some code mods and some other things to really just try to and some recipes and everything. There's a good like guide already about what the updating process looks like. We've upgraded so many of our internal usages of XM Cloud to Content SDK, and like we've been able to get some of them done in like an hour or two. So we just would like to encourage that. But so yeah, there will be a time period in which like Content SDK is the vehicle for XM Cloud, and now JSS now has an opportunity to go through a similar exercise eventually to become a little bit more XM and XP focused, and get like revitalize itself in its own life.
Okay, yeah, that answers the question, because I see the versioning is totally different for Content SDK, which kind of gives me a hint that they will go totally separate ways.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. JSS versioning is just tied to platform upgrades, and so it will remain. That's always been the commitment of JSS, and so it will remain as such. And then Content SDK will be semantic to just what major and minor version releases are.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask is about the starter kit availability, because I was trying to find the starter kit that effectively has Content SDK so far. And like if I take a look at Foundation Head, it points to JSS. So is it a separate starter kit to be dropped off, or is it like the original Foundation Head gets branched as well? So how do you see the starter kit evolution timeline, and where do we get it from? The most important question.
Sure. So let me get you the link to the starter kit. Apologies for that not being available. The timeline for like the Foundation Head. So there's two things about the Foundation Head. One, the Foundation Head has a branching strategy where it's actually 3 different repositories for our own delivery process, as opposed to just branches of dev, staging, and prod.
Yeah.
That is noisy, so we're going to consolidate into a single repository for the Content SDK starter kit, common deployment practices for the dev branch, the staging branch, and the production branch. And right now the Foundation Head is on Sitecore Labs and not on Sitecore's like main GitHub account, and so we'd like to move it into just our main GitHub account. So what you will see is you'll see the new starter kit eventually be on Sitecore, not Sitecore Labs, and it will be one repository for all 3 of those production branches. I think it's already there. I don't want to speak out of turn.
Last time I checked, it was a week ago, so things may have changed.
I think it might already be on the GitHub account. I have to check. I will do that now. And then on our internal GitHub account, the Sitecore one, not the Sitecore Labs. And then apparently I have to log into GitHub again. And then
the Content SDK is there, and it is there for I think 3 weeks so far, or something like that.
The Content SDK repository still has the package for Create Sitecore JSS with the sample application for Next.js. So that could be a way to see as a simple project.
You're totally right. That is the most appropriate way to do that, Jeff. Thank you for that incredibly good advice. Yeah, if you go into the create JSS package, you'll be able to see the actual starter kit template itself, because you can kind of generate that via the CLI. And so that actually may be the answer right there, Jeff, is that the explicit starter kit repository hasn't been made yet, because the process of doing the thing I was saying, which is making the deployment process of the 3 staging, dev, and prod, requires us to change a little bit of our release patterns. And so we're doing that work explicitly. It will show up now. If I were Christian Han, who runs that team, I'd be able to say this immediately. But so those three, that production release cycle, once that's done, there will be an explicit starter kit repository in Sitecore, Sitecore's official GitHub repository. But in the meantime, you can go into Create JSS and you can see the starter kit, or you can use the JSS CLI and just create a JSS project. And if you use the CLI to create a JSS project, it will output a Next.js like JSS XM Cloud starter kit project. So
Yeah, it might be only missing an XM Cloud.build.json. It will be just the front end project. Yeah.
correct. It would be just a front end project. Yeah. And technically, all that starter kit repository is a CI/CD process to output what comes out of the CLI into a full repository with everything else that is XM Cloud.
Anyone else has any questions?
I do. Did I get it right that it will follow semantic versioning with breaking change only on major versions?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, good.
We love. We're maybe as happy as our customers about that. Like,
Cool. I have two other questions. One of them is I saw the component builder temp file was still there and you explained it all. Is there still support to have adding components from the NPM packages to the component builder?
correct. Yes. Yes.
Cool.
And
My last one. Oh,
feature is gonna grow. Like we have like we're going to make the like essentially a really nice in the sitecore config.ts file, you'll have really clean glob patterns for like pulling in any other npm packages, any other like packages within a mono repo, excluding things. So we're going to make configuration of what goes into the component builder really cleanly in the Sitecore config TS, and that is one of the things that's coming shortly.
okay. Another question is about the wildcard pages in Sitecore. I know with JSS it's quite cumbersome. You have to create your own ... path, and you have to play with the layout service request to make the request the correct path and things like that. Is there anything to help developers with that within Content SDK?
Not that I know of, but now that you've brought this up and have it recorded, I'll send that to the JSS team to have them ideate on it. But as I recall, I don't think that that's been an addressed feature within it. But
Okay, cool.
see.
And is the Content SDK making it easier to work with Turbo Repo within XM Cloud or not?
Yes, yes, you can. Yes, you can use Turbo Repo. You can use PNPM. You can use whatever you want. Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Liz.
Of course, of course.
And our browser is coming shortly.
And
in
App
addition to
Router,
it.
and App Router is coming. That yes, yes. We're starting now. So yeah.
Yeah, I cannot underestimate how big the changes are. Really appreciate to hear that.
Yeah, and then one of the other nice things is that there's actually a couple of things that are coming with the React 19 and Next 15 upgrades that are also kind of nice. Like React 15 allows us, and that React 19 allows us to remove a few of the patterns that were supported in earlier versions of React. So there's actually like little subtle efficiencies that we'll be able to like put into the package even before we get out of beta. That are again kind of additional improvements that we get to leverage.
There was some misalignment. I cannot say for sure, but what I remember was like half of Next.js supported 19 React, half of Next.js didn't. This part, which was App Router, we write from the page router differently. So
Yeah. Exactly. So it's all getting cleaned up now, and that should be out, I think, by the end of May. Yeah.
right. Thank you very much for this insightful presentation, and especially we appreciate that given and understanding what time is it in your time zone. So on behalf of all the community, thank you very much for sharing that.
Of course. Thanks, everyone.
With that in mind, David Austin,
right.
please welcome to the stage.
You can hear me okay?
Absolutely, we can.
Perfect. All right. Let's share my screen. All right. So thank you, Liz. I have to say that without all of those starter kits and all those efficiencies, I probably would not be able to do this demo as easily as I have been without them. So yeah. So this little mini presentation is on attestation-driven front end. I probably never said the word attestation before this recent project. It never even crossed my mind in terms of really what it meant. But basically, we need to build personalized experiences within Sitecore, within the front end, and largely without CDP and Personalize. I've been fortunate enough to work on a number of projects with CDP and Personalize. I think as Derek, who's in attendance here, knows. But this project, we didn't have that capability. So it was really kind of back to the drawing board in terms of how we were going to meet our clients' expectations, really. But first, what is attestation? So weird word, but it is essentially the selection done by the visitor, typically on their own, usually on the first time when they're coming to a site, where they're kind of acknowledging who they are and where they're from. It's not necessarily their identity. It's not saying, I am John Smith. It might be, I am, an intermediate developer, or I am a senior developer and I'm from Canada. It could be, in the case of this demo, I decided to, just because I couldn't use my client's example, I was just like, all right, we're just going to say Star Wars. It's like, are you with the Empire or are you with the Rebel Alliance? Very clear distinction. It should be an easy pick. But in terms of the challenges that we have with this, one of the things, and these are the challenges largely laid out by our client, was all of this personalization delivered to the client should in no way impact the site's performance. It should be as quick as it is today or faster to render all of the necessary information. But we need to have basically attestation controls on the page level, on the component level, on the result level, and really even on the navigation level to either allow people to see various content or restrict them from accessing that content. But we also have to maintain the server-side rendering. And I put a little asterisk there because the client's version of server-side rendering is obviously very different from ours. They wanted the ability to ensure all of the search engines like Google, SEMrush, any of those scraping tools, along with all the AI agents, to be able to take all the content that's on their website, regardless of any of those attestation restrictions, so that it met all their SEO requirements. In the past, they had, when working with AI agents to test out their own content, they'd see, the JavaScript handlebars coming back in the actual ChatGPT responses, which is no good. Like it's clearly coming from their site, and they wanted to make sure that all was cleaned up. So when it came to building site, and Jeff was kind of part of this discussion in terms of how do we approach it, that we can, achieve that level of performance, but still offer the users that same, or I should say, the visitors to the site, the same level of security or scrutiny of what they should be allowed to see. And it came down to three options. We have the SSG and use effect option. The only problem with that, it's high performing, but the user can see all the JSON, they can see the network requests, they can see the details coming back. We can go to the SSG and the middleware and looking up whether or not a person has access to a page or not. Not bad, a little bit hit on performance, or the SSR using get server side props, where pretty much everything is rendered to that end user. And I'd say on the performance level, they're all still very fast, but there is some noticeable potential impacts to that end user. And so this was really a question that we posed back to the client. It's like, how secure is that information to you? You've already told us you want Google to be able to scrape it entirely, regardless of that attestation rule. You want it in ChatGPT. If a user looks at the view source, can they see it? Is that okay? And then they basically said yes. The expectation is that what the user will see when they're browsing the website is what we want them to see, regardless of what's ever else behind the scenes. And not only that, it's an attestation that the actual user will be able to change. They're not restricted to it. At any point in time, they can make that change. They can switch basically who they are. And so essentially, whether you're allowed to see the page on the first visit, you're prompted to acknowledge who you are. If you decline to provide it, in our case, the client's like, nope, just send them off to the homepage. They can't see anything else. If they've provided their attestation, their persona selection, check to see if they can see the page that they're going to. And if they are, send them off to the page. Really, really that simple. We do all of that in the past fall. I'll kind of show a bit of that. But in terms of how they're applied, so we apply the same persona selection here. It's all, in our case, it's all in a multi-list. In our client's case, there are 75 personas that can be selected. So it's a combination of role and location. And every single component, and like I said, link on the top nav or on the page can all contain either, as we tell the client, the page level will be the largest, and then you might filter and dissect smaller values as you go within the page. But it can create an issue. If you have, as I was working at a challenge this morning, if you have 72 out of 75 personas you need to select, you're sending a lot of data to the page potentially unnecessarily. So how do you maintain that, and how do you maintain that performance? It's a juggle. It's utilizing component level integrated GraphQL to streamline components to make sure you're only sending the absolute information necessary, and really taking time to examine that. That was our big thing. We're still somewhat in the early stages, but refining that process early on means we can build components a lot faster going forward down the line, because we've solved that big problem. It's the same for every single problem or for every component. We just essentially apply it for every single one. And so, like I said, for the purposes of this demo, I chose Star Wars, so you have to choose between the Rebel Alliance or the Empire. If you're denied, obviously you're shuttled back to the homepage, and you get told, sorry, you can't see what you're going to see. We do house essentially all of the personas for the page in the persona provider that we've created. We load it up the first time the user's there. We'll check to see, is there a cookie present? Is their selection is already there? That cookie expires after a year. And if they're coming back from a fresh page, we just quickly load that, store it in the persona, see whether or not we have to load up the form or not. And then the rules get passed through. And obviously we do check to see if, are you a user agent crawler? Should you actually being able to see that content? So you can effectively bypass the security. And I'll show you how that actually happens in the demo as well. The persona provider obviously wraps all of the components on the page. We have an attestation component that effectively wraps every single component we have, and it does it the same way every single time. It takes, as a result, because we've applied this in the same manner, it takes 10 minutes to make that change. If a client is building a component, it still works through Storybook, so our clients' branding guides are not affected by any of those rules, and it just it does it quite seamlessly there. The attestation component, we basically make sure that you're seeing if there are personas applied to a particular component. If there are, is a person allowed to see that? Are you in editing mode, so we can bypass all of that? Or are you essentially a crawler and you're viewing the content in a way that we want you to get all the content for scraping purposes and whatnot? And then we added even this attestation label onto the page, and I'll show you what its purpose is because if you're viewing the page in Pages and you're adding components in and you're applying all those attestation rules, if another author comes in or you've gone away for a while, looking at the page out of the box, you're not going to know right away what's attestation controlled or not. It's not immediately going to be possible. So we had to do this. This wasn't a request for the client. We did it largely for our QA because it made her life a lot easier, that she could quickly see, okay, all of these components are indeed controlled by attestation. I know for a fact whether or not they're going to work or not. And it made her life a lot easier when she does her testing. And then how to deal with scrollers. So like I said, we actually have a flag that we set up largely so that, like I said, the client's definition of the view source and what it means to them. So they wanted to see all that content. And because of the way the pages are being built, we kind of threw in this flag so that we could enable when user agent is essentially undefined. If for whatever reason the user agent is undefined, we still want that content to be scrapable. The clients made it clear that the content it doesn't matter. Like, you can get to it if you know the right angles. The purpose of the site is to help guide you and simplify your view of all of their content. Right? They have a ton of content, and it's just really an avenue to say, it's like, look, you're from Belgium. We're going to hide all the stuff that doesn't make sense to you. We just want to show you what is appropriate for if you're somebody coming from Belgium. So this just helps streamline things for a lot of people. And in terms of kind of within Sitecore itself, and like I said, I spun this demo up, and it probably took me less than 4 hours to get all this in place, which is awesome. But we essentially have every page with a persona selection. Likewise, on the banners, it's the exact same persona selection. And I have to say, we were so thrilled. As you can see, we're using multi-list. When Pages came out and supported multi-list, probably not that long ago, it made our day. I have to say, it was a great day that we could show that off to the client. I think it was actually a few weeks right before the first demo we had with our client, in fact. But yeah, so like when you come to the first page, you're prompted to pick, okay, I'm going to pick, I'm going to go with the Rebel Alliance this time. I'm saying from the USA. I click agree, and immediately it's like, okay, I've got a banner that is appropriate for me. It's already customized that person that response to that end user. Obviously, I could click it. I could go and say I'm from Canada, from the Empire. The page is not actively refreshing. The content is all there, and then we can see it. And like I said, the response. If I go to the Rebels page, we block out what the person could possibly see. Obviously, if they look at the network traffic, you can go back and see it. But it's like, oh no, you don't have access to it. The source code, like I said, you could see it all. If I remove that flag that I showed you on the is crawler, it could very quickly hide all the unnecessary content. So, from the client's point of view, they're happy they can see it. If they choose their mind, we can actually remove it as well. But it does work in Pages. I mean, we can very easily see, it's like, okay, I've got 2 components in place. I know very easily what components are controlled by what levels of attestation. And if I need to, again, thanks. I think I need to reload that page. Yep. I can actually make that change within, the client doesn't have to leave the actual site. They can actually come in here and update the attestation for that component really, really fast. It's certainly, if I do Google here, I can refresh. I can actually see both pieces of content on the page. So no matter how the information is being consumed, we haven't really affected performance. It's still a very fast site, and it'd be great if we were able to use Personalize. There's a lot of things I could see. Obviously they're not a Star Wars website client, but Personalize certainly would, just add a lot more to it. We could throw a lot of that persona data into Personalize to even throw even more customization for the user, but we're still able to make it work. It's very similar back to the days of personas and variants and whatnot. But yeah, that's all I have. Any questions?
This is Boris. A super quick question. So I'm curious, like that's quite cool, actually. This is like very creative. So guys, you came up with a cool idea for sure. But as far as like doing this with rules, is there any reason why not to use rules? Like just to, or am I off base completely here?
I'm not sure. I think in the case that we were using it, it largely had to do with the breakdown in terms of the personas themselves and the management of it. A lot of it, because we're really dealing with the content migration aspect of it. And like in the case of their attestation spreadsheet, we were given, a list of, like I said, 75 or so attestation rules, but those rules apply to all of the content. This was just kind of the simplest way implemented. Well, that's not to say there aren't other ways. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah, I've been thinking like, is there like a Sitecore classic way to do it? But I see your point, right? Like you have configurations that not necessarily compatible with the rules. Plus, like how do you manage those rules? Like it's also not that straightforward. There are
yeah, like I think so. Certainly with pages, obviously you have page variants, and with ABN breakdowns and whatnot, there's a lot there that I see the future of that going wise. Obviously, there's some restrictions in terms of what I can personalize on. But if you had access to that personalize and the conditions flowing into that, you very well likely could have, build this using a lot of the built-in aspects of pages. It was largely due to our limitation without having personalized it. We were kind of forced into this direction.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Any more questions? Anyone?
Cool. Thanks very much.
Thank you, David. It's really creative, I would say. Right. With that in mind, the next final speaker for today, that would be Saurabh. And as I remember, you are presenting us Linter, LinkedIn technology. Could you please more introduce what is that about? Green, but you are on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yep. Actually, I want to introduce the ESLint plugin for Sitecore JSS. That's a plugin that enforces using the Sitecore JSS component in our code base. So I try to be quick after these two incredible good presentation. It's hard for present, but yeah, that's it. So Sitecore JSS, very quickly about the Sitecore JSS component. Sitecore JSS introduced a couple of components for the React and Next.js, like text, link, image component and file component. This component, they are kind of best practice for Sitecore JSS because they ensure we use full compatibility. They have full compatibility with the experience editor and also inline editor in XM Cloud. They safely handle the null checking and also check for the any type issue, and also they make the code more consistent during the whole code base. So these are the list of the Sitecore JSS React component. For example, we have a general, if the Sitecore field type is general link, the JSS React component is a link, same for the image and text, which text and date. So if we use the raw HTML instead of this, we lost couple of features in the Sitecore. The main one is the experience editor. So very quickly, ESLint, everyone for sure knows what's ESLint. ESLint is a linter that helps us to catch a bug and enforce a standard in earlier stages. And the good thing about the ESLint that is fully extendable, so we can customize ESLint and add our own rules based on our needs. That's what I did for the Sitecore JSS component. And I added JSS component enforcement to the ESLint. So why I create that one? Because as I explained, if we use the raw HTML instead of the Sitecore JSS component, it causes some issue with the experience editor and inline editing, especially for the new developer to Sitecore. Even myself, when I start with the XM code, I just use the raw HTML. So it's better to enforce them to use the JSS component. It makes our code more consistent in whole code base. So it's not one place we use the raw HTML, one place use the JSS component. And if we want to manually check for the type safety, for example, if we want to check the text should not be a empty string, we need to check the image not be null or something is not undefined. That's very error prone. So if we just use the Sitecore JSS component, it makes our code more reliable. For sure, without the linking, there is no enforcement to using the best practices as a standard during the code. That's the whole idea that bring me to develop the ESLint plugin for Sitecore JSS. So what's ESLint plugin for Sitecore JSS do? It detects incorrect usage of the Sitecore JSS component, like if someone using the P tag or A tag instead of the text component or link component. It recommends that the right component based on the type of the Sitecore field. It supports the dash dash fix or auto fixing for the ESLint. It's on the earlier stage. It works fine in many stages, but I'm still working on that to improve that option. And also after version 1.1, I'm convert all code to the TypeScript. So it's worked very, very seamlessly with the TypeScript and ESLint. And the last option is that it has an option to enforce all rules for the Sitecore JSS component, or you can just enforce one rule. For example, you can just say, okay, just check for the images or just check for the links, the one that you want to customize that. And so installation is very easy, like all of the NPM packages, you just need to do the NPM install and install it after you install for the configuration. Because this component, this plugin is based on the TypeScript ESLint. You need to set the parser to the TypeScript and link to the your TS config file and add a plugin for show Sitecore JSS. There are two options to add a plugin. One is the recommended way to use all rules. Just in the extended, you need to add a plugin sitecore-jss/all to enforce all rules. Or if you want to customize it more, you can just customize a rule based on the component. For example, for the text component, rich text component, and image link and file. And also you can change the state from the warn to error based on how much you want to be strict on that enforcement. For example, maybe in some project, we want to make sure for the image, we always use the image component. So we can just change it to the error and try that one. Let's just very quickly go through what it do. For example, if we have a cycle text field, it makes sure it suggests that you need to use the text field instead of the just a p tag, and move the p tag as attribute to the Sitecore.js component to make it compatible with the sidecar. And same thing for the rich text. It check for the type of the body. For example, if the property fields.body is a rich text field, then it suggests you to use the rich text and move the div to the attribute as a tag. For the image, you see, make the code more cleaner. And instead of the image tag in raw HTML, it just suggests to use the image component. And as you know, image component, the Sitecore JSS support the alt, title and everything. So it make our code much, much more cleaner. And for the rich text, it check the, for the link. And if we use the a tag, link it with the href and the value of the text, it just suggests to change it to the link component inside CodeJSS, and link component, we just need to link to the external link or external link and whatever link that we have, and that make code really cleaner, same as a file. It's very similar to the link. You just use the file component from Sitecore based on the type of the field and make it compatible with the Sitecore.js component. Okay, for the demo, I just want to show you how it works, how it catch the error, and how it will fix the error. Let me just stop this and share my screen again. And sorry. Okay. Okay. As you see my code editor, I installed the plugin, ESLint plugin Sitecore.js 113. I just did the 113 thing yesterday. I fixed some bugs, and on ESLint, and I set the linter as a TypeScript, link to the tsconfig file, and use the all rules to implement all rules here. And for now, I comment this one to show you how it works. And if I, here you see, for example, for the title, the type is the text field. And if you go over here, it's recommend you to use the text component from Sitecore instead of the p tag. Same here, is commented for the rich text. And here for the image, as I explained, is you recommended to use the image tag. And if I run the linter just for this file to be very quick, it could go through that file only and find the issue that we have based on the Sitecore JSS component. Okay. And you see it's find the error. There are 5 errors here, and just list it for you that you can fix them. Or if we want to make it specific, we can just came here, or for example, here, just put the image, uncomment the image, save it. And if I back here and run the comment again, it will just find the image as error, As you see here, it already did that. Let's take a little time. Okay, you see, just find the image and recommended to use the image Sitecore JSS component. And if I run it with the dash dash fix or just this one to make it very quickly show the result, it will change this one to something like this. You see, change this one to the Sitecore JSS component, and yeah, you can just, it will work fix for the all of them, but it is still in progress, and I'm trying to make it better and better for fixing option. If we back to a presentation, yeah. Yeah, help to improve the plugin. The plugin is open source in GitHub and npm. If you use that, if you run any issue and have any idea, you can just open the issue and even better do the PR. That should be much better. And yeah, that's the plugin that I developed for the ESLint plugin, and I'm here to any idea, question, especially feedback to improve the plugin.
So Rob, a quick one. When you basically have this problem on a page, does it allow you to do quick fix? Like there is an option in menu for quick fix. If you come back to your code where you have p tag, and then within p tag there was your props embedded.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't have a
Let's
quick
take a look.
fix. I can share it again, but it doesn't have a quick fix, but that's a very good suggestion that I can work on that and add it. If I can here, let's just Control Z. Like, you see, yeah, it has a quick fix, actually. Yeah, fix with the Sitecore just image.
Let's fix it.
Let's fix it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it does
yeah,
it does the job. Yeah.
Yeah, it does the job. Yeah, I never tried that, but thank you for letting me know. Yeah.
That's basically the purpose of a linter, not just to
Yeah.
notify, but to do all these fixes, right?
I thought maybe we need to add a specific code for quick fix, but that's good that is supported, in Box.
Awesome. Any questions from the audience?
I have one. Thank you, Saurabh, for the presentation. Really good. I noticed in your rich text.tsx file around line 40 that you had the rich text component from JSS used with tag equal p. That's also a smell in JSS because the rich text content can contain other p tags, and a p tag inside of a p tag is invalid in HTML. So would it be possible to add a rule as an idea to detect that exact use case and flag it and fix it by changing the tag to a div?
Okay, so the main tag changed to the DV because the rich text has a div. Yeah, I think it's possible to
Yeah,
add that kind of rules for that. Yeah. Thank you for your suggestion,
that would be a
Jeff.
good one, a good
Yeah,
rule to add.
yep. I just take a note.
It's valid for the text component because you're using it with a single line text or multi-line text, but specifically for rich text, it's usually invalid to use tag p.
Yeah, as I know, if we have a p tag and inside the p tag we have a div tag, it throw the error. But does it throw the error if you have a p tag and inside the p tag we have another p tag?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah,
it will.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, good to know. Sure. Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, that's really good one.
If there are no more questions, that wraps up our 13th session of Headless Sitecore Development User Group. Thank you everyone for attending, and see you next month. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.